Good evening, and welcome to the Oaklander for October. I'm your host, Al DiGiacomo. We have a wonderful show in store for you tonight. But first, I'd like to recap some of the current issues of our town. In early August, the Oakland Board of Education began the search for a new superintendent to replace Dr. Larry Kazansnak, who will be retiring in 1997. Some residents believe parents should be included in the final decision along with teachers, administrators, and the Board of Education. A quote from Harry Turritelli in the August 2nd Suburban News: "A decision that is this important should not be left to two people. Today's educators should need fresh ideas with the opportunity to move forward. Let a new leader carve out a new path into the future of our children's education." We support the idea of parental involvement on this decision, and if you have further thoughts on this matter, please contact us. The borough is actively seeking a replacement for Administrator Bob Hammer. We hope the mayor and council will select the most qualified person to fill the position. We thank Mr. Hammer for a job well done in his 7 years of service. A reminder that Election Day is November 7th, and although we who vote get to experience what the politically correct crowd term as stress-free elections, as the mayor and 2 council seats are on the ballot, unopposed. Still, the state assembly seats are not. And now for a pop quiz. What is Oakland's district number, and who are the 2 assembly members? Do you know? Call us now at 405-1084 and we'll send you an Oaklander bumper sticker. I'm here with Ron Felber, author of Searchers. It tells the story of a young couple's encounter with UFOs and beings who have changed their lives. Ron, thanks for letting us talk to you for a moment.
My pleasure.
Ron, this bears a resemblance to the Betty and Barney Hill experience in the early 1960s, who claimed that they were abducted. Can you tell us a bit about the incident of Stephen Dawn Hess?
Sure. There are some similarities between the Betty and Barney Hill account and the Stephen Dawn Hess account, but there are also a lot of things that are not similar. Betty and Barney Hill from the 60s had an experience that was brought out through nightmares. They recall taking a drive. They recall the missing time, a drive that should have taken 2 hours, took 4, that kind of thing. They had terrible nightmares, and they went to a psychiatrist because of those nightmares. The doctor, in what is a pretty common technique these days, retrogressed them to the moment of the experience and hypnotized them, brought them back to that time, and they recounted an encounter with aliens in some detail. The difference between that and Stephen Dawn Hess is that this was a conscious experience. Stephen Dawn Hess were a young couple, very credible people, a husband who was in the construction industry, a manager, a woman who was a young mom with 3 children, very stable, no history of drugs, no history of mental illness, incredibly stable people, intelligent. These people were on a camping trip in the Mojave Desert and encountered a glowing object. It started with 1, then became 9, and soon became hundreds of glowing objects in this desolate nighttime sky in the Mojave Desert that began descending. From there, they actually found themselves under assault, a kind of an invasion almost of craft moving towards them. The husband, who was a hunter, had a shotgun and was prepared to do battle with them, but the wife began receiving a telepathic message: don't do anything to harm us or try to harm us, or we'll kill you. Get in the back of the camper and there'll be no problems. They sought refuge in the back of their camper, which literally had windows, as you can imagine, but became a kind of prison. And for 8 conscious hours, a huge UFO hovered above them. Mining operations apparently started taking place in a tremendous orchestration of events that happened. And they became surrounded by alien beings who for 8 hours put them through psychological and physical torment. Literally moment to moment, these two beings, these two individuals, were pinching themselves. Do you see what I see? I see a being who looks illuminated. Do you see that? And cross-checking descriptions moment to moment. Praying, literally praying for their survival, thinking that they would never survive this. On the verge of coronary attacks, moment to moment. Again, where finally the beings themselves seemed to take control of their breathing. They were put through a battery of psychological tests, some of them pleasant, many of them horrendous. Mental anguish where they saw their children abducted and experimented on like animals would be in an autopsy. Situations where Steve, who was a hunter, was literally pursued like an animal across a desert terrain. Dawn, who had been the victim of a rape, a childhood rape, relived this rape, but not in terms of memory, but physically became there, experiencing these things again, while these beings, almost in a ghoulish way, hovered around them, looking through the windows, staring at them like animals in a zoo, extracting their emotions, putting ideas in their head, putting feelings in their head, lust. Where Dawn, who had literally, again, been raped as a child, her husband, again, attempts to rape her in the back of the camper. I mean, incredible emotional experiences and torment that these beings feasted on and extracted these from her, almost as an experiment, from both of them, as an experiment, apparently to gauge how human emotions work, how they could be pushed to the brink of madness, what brought them ecstasy, what brought them fear, etc. So this was a much, much more intense experience than Betty and Barney Hill. Afterwards, 4 hours additional were recovered through hypnosis by the director of the National Center of Psychiatry in Washington, D.C. And these individuals talked about actually being brought on the craft and being conversant for periods of time with these alien beings.
Do you feel that there are any ancient or religious references to these events?
That's an interesting question. And the answer is yes. Both Steve and Dawn talked about a broad-based contact happening soon. If not in this generation or in my lifetime or yours, in our children certainly. And a third wave, a first wave of just sightings, which everybody's very familiar with, I think, the UFOs in the sky, the unexplained lights. Then the Betty and Barney Hill wave, which would have been recovered memories through hypnosis. Now to a third wave where literally, for prolonged periods of time, are conscious experiences and communications that go on between what would seem to be alien beings or interdimensional travelers and human beings. In terms of religion, there's two phenomena that have happened here. One is, oddly enough, right in that area of the desert are petroglyphs or cave drawings that date back 700, 500 years from the Paiute Indians that depict the very beings that the Hesses encountered. Also in the Mojave Desert there is a famous land drawing, a ground drawing that can only be seen from high up, thousands of feet in the air, an aerial drawing they call it. And by the way, it's in Mystical Places, a book which Time Life put out, and it's unexplained. Oddly enough, the so-called Mojave twins that are depicted there are exactly what the Hesses encountered that night in October 1989.
That is incredible. Speaking about interdimensional planes or quantum physics, these encounters were said to be in a strange silence where the entire desert became quiet. under the control of the searcher, so to speak. Have you done any research of quantum physics and how that may pertain to the Hesses?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of phenomena going on here. You had asked about religion, and I'll try to point this out, that this is not a new experience. This is an ancient experience.
Mm-hmm.
In biblical times, it's very common to talk about a soundless, fiery chariot, to talk about angels spontaneously appearing. Very, very common. Through another set of eyes, the Hess experience clearly could be viewed that way. And as a matter of fact, many people that read the book, and I'm fortunate 100,000 copies of Searchers have been sold in paperback so far. I get a lot of mail, and I get a lot of questions on interview shows where they're call-ins that relate this experience to a classic battle between good and evil, where the illuminated figures become a sort of angelic presence, where these gremlin type, these horrific beings that have red eyes that they describe, become demon figures. So what's changed, it seems to me, are two things. One is that the mindset has changed from a religious point of view in biblical times and less modern times to a more technical or scientific point of view these days, which take angels and call them aliens, which take spacecraft or fiery chariots and call them spacecraft. I would like to take a step beyond that and remind people that the man that invented the transistor, his name escapes me at the moment, but obviously a forward-thinking man, took vacuum tubes and translated them into transistors in the late 1940s, early 1950s, predicted that no man would ever set foot on the moon. And yet, 18 years later, a man did set foot on the moon. Similarly, with regard to interdimensional travel, today we talk about space and time and 186 miles per second, the speed of light, as being insurmountable. But I'm not so sure it is insurmountable. I think that there's a very strong possibility that much as we took travel by, let's say, boat, ship, or it took 7 days to go from New York to Europe, today we do that in a matter of 4 or 5 hours in the Concorde.
Right.
We didn't do that by inventing faster ships. We did it by inventing a new kind of travel, jet travel.
Right.
In my view, much of this has a lot to do with interdimensional travel, with travel approaching or beyond the speed of light.
Thank you, Ron Felber, for being our guest tonight on the Oaklander. Ron is the author of Searchers, now in paperback, published by St. Martin's Press. Let's take this subject to a closer location. Greg, beam us back to TCI Studios. We're back in the studio with an author of another book on UFOs. This time the area is the Ramapo Mountains and the lower New York State town known as Pine Bush. Please welcome author of Silent Invasion and UFO researcher Ellen Crystal. Ellen, welcome to the Oaklander.
Thanks.
Silent Invasion is quite a title, especially for the non-believing. Could you tell us about some of your first-hand experiences with aliens and UFOs?
Well, I had initial sightings and close encounters in California in 1971, and I never believed that what was happening out there was only to that area. And I eventually found out in 1980 about this town called Pine Bush, where people said UFOs were landing on a regular basis, and I went up there with a friend of mine from Omni magazine at that time, and that began a series of new encounters, and I basically turned it into a research project and collected data and got a lot of people involved and got scientists involved. I've taken a couple thousand photographs. I've a couple dozen videotapes now.
It was a fascinating read. I was totally engrossed by the book, especially the 1 or 2 pages that you tell about what happened in Wanacue, New Jersey. Now, Wanacue, New Jersey is right next to us, and you stated that in the book, in I believe it was 1961, that a UFO rose from the bottom of the reservoir, and the police saw it. Can you elaborate a little bit more for us?
Well, it was basically throughout the 1960s where the Wanacue Reservoir is drinking water, so anything that goes into it has to be investigated.
Right.
And what happened one night when the normal patrol was out, the cops and security patrol, they saw a craft go into the water, and they went to take a look, and when the craft came out of the water, it actually shot at one of the cops and blinded him, knocked him out of the car. And I mean, there's a lot of things that people still don't realize. There were a lot of people involved, and when it made the papers, thousands of people showed up in Wanacue to try and see UFO, and they did see it, and it made the whole thing much bigger an event, and it really was worldwide reported. And what Wanacue decided to do was put up floodlights, and they put that up, and that stopped the ships and the people. But there are still sightings. I mean, I had one of my photographs is on file at the reservoir, and I have it in my book, and there are still many sightings going on.
Do you believe that they're studying us or cultivating us, or what do you believe the ultimate goal of some of these occurrences are?
Well, I think that they're here for their own purposes. And I mean, technology is expensive, and if somebody actually came from wherever to here, crossing the distances which our scientists keep saying are impossible to cross, then you have to know there's a greater purpose, and it's not to play tag with any of us or humor us, or I mean, there's a lot of abductions going on, which we believe is they're trying possibly to interbreed with people to create another type of race, possibly because their own is in trouble. I mean, that's one of the theories.
Or to take us to the next level of humanity.
Well,
speculation.
I guess that could be a theory too.
Speculation. Sure. If so many of these accounts have been identified, there has been, I believe, 40 crashes of UFOs.
Yeah, since 1980.
Why has the mainstream news ignored these accounts?
I think that they're afraid of it. They don't know how to report it. News anchors sit in their studios 12 hours a day. They don't look up. If they handed a story they just don't know anything about, they dismiss it. And especially being New York news is really the only ball game in town, basically, you know, aside from really local newscasts. So in New York news, if they report it, it's as a joke. And even reporters that I've spoken with over the years have no understanding at all, don't want to understand it, don't think it's any big deal, don't really care about it.
Do you really think that when I say the government, I say the governments around the world, do you think that they really know the real deal and are keeping information from us?
Well, in my book I talk about the governments that we know and elect are really figureheads, and there's actually, this is throughout history, what people call shadow governments or underground governments, which are actually running the planet, and we just elect people and think they're running the show when they're not. So I think that the elected officials don't have a clue for the most part, and what's being presented more and more now is that Congress is the least informed of anybody in the political arena. I mean, even like some of the governors now, you have a governor of, I think Rhode Island was very interested in the UFO thing. I think, I can't think of his name offhand. I'm thinking of a name, but it might have been the name of his aide. But anyway, you do have some people here and there that are interested for various reasons, And I was contacted by New York State officials also because, but the thing is, when they contact you, they never ask you what they think you're going to be asked. I mean, they asked me how to release information, and I said, well, you know, what, are you kidding? I mean, that's, you know, use your brain, you do it. You know, I mean, nobody's getting paid for any of this. We're all, you know.
I understand that you have had encounters with alien beings. Tell us more about some of the experiences, personal experiences that you had maybe in Pine Bush, and what, if anything, could someone do to document an encounter that they may be having?
Well, I've seen aliens twice up close, and I've been touching distance of the craft a number of times. And
when you were about to throw the pebbles at them?
Right, I talk about that in my book. The craft was maybe, it was a few feet from me. It was above me in the car, and it was stationary. And as it hung there, I guess they saw the wheels starting to go in my head. I started to look like I was thinking, and it suddenly occurred to me I should pick up some pebbles and see if they ping off this thing. And as I guess they saw me thinking and internalizing, that's when they started to back away and fly off. But I've had a number of really close encounters over the years with craft where I saw the complete craft, and I talk about there being about a dozen different types of craft.
Triangular.
There's a rectangle, there's a boomerang, which I have, what I call the boomerang, what really the Hudson Valley book calls the boomerang. There's a book, Night Siege, by Phil Imbrogno, and he really did the east side of the Hudson River, and I did the west side of the Hudson River, but they were seeing the some kind of boomerang craft, and I've never really seen what they were talking about. But there are about a dozen different type of craft. There's no saucer sightings. So, you know, and every time I say that, somebody says, well, I saw a saucer last week. But there are circular craft, but they're not the classic saucer shape that people used to hear about.
Maybe they're referring to the light that they first encountered.
Yeah, a lot of times the lights are in a position which is not the shape of the craft, and it really fools the observer.
Now, you're also started an organization called Abductee.
No, Contactee.
Contactee. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
Same concept.
And so basically you communicate with people who have made contact.
Well, I put out a newsletter that talks about current research, and I'm trying to get the right type of information out, not this Space Brothers nonsense that's going around, or the aliens have come to save you know, the Earth and that nonsense.
I'm one of those people who do not think that they are here for a benevolent...
party. They're here for a party. But there's too many people that think this is very benevolent, just serene type of thing, and they couldn't be further from what's really going on.
Well, I can see their point. We're at the end of a second millennium. There's been talk of a second coming, and I think that they try to blend that together. But that's definitely something to ponder upon, and I think that we may be reaching critical mass of something, and this may be the mass. And if people were out there, what you told about the certain type of camera techniques that if someone wanted to take a picture.
I talk about how if you see a UFO, how to photograph it, and what to do basically, and also where to go to see UFOs. I mean, everybody I know and I always come in contact with want to know where to go see these things, which is what my thing has always been. You know, you got to go out and see these things, and I happen to either figure it out or get lucky. I don't know which.
Is it still prevalent up in Pine Bush?
Yeah, it's still going on. On a good Saturday night where there's good weather, there are hundreds of people out observing. And you talk about cover-up with the media. I mean, this has been going on basically since about a year after my book. My book came out in '92, so about 1993, there started to escalate the number of people coming to the town, and now, like on a good Saturday night, you'll have a few hundred people lining the streets, and the media doesn't cover it. So,
well, there's a lot of things that they don't cover. Well, Ellen, Crystal, thank you so much for illuminating these fascinating events with our audience here on the Oaklander. And again, Ellen's book is entitled Silent Invasion, and it truly is captivating for those who are open to new thoughts and ideas involving UFOs. Thanks again, Ellen,
You're
for
welcome.
being our guest. And now for something completely different.
I wish I could join the other kids for Halloween. It really looks like fun.
Hey guys, look, it's Frosty. Come on, Frosty, let's go trick-or-treating.
Oh boy, this is so neat. Can I knock on the door?
Absolutely, let's go. Let's try this house. I heard they had lots of candy. Lots of candy. Lots of candy. Yes. Candy, 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 candy.
Here goes. Boy, this is...
Trick or treat!
Oh, hello there. Aren't we cute? Girls, come on and see the kids.
Yes, happy day.
Boy, you all look great. And if I didn't know any better, I'd swear you were a real snowman.
Yeah, sure, a real snowman.
Happy Halloween, kids. But we just ran out of candy.
All we have left is the Breedles.
Oh, yeah! I just love the Breedles.
Oh, there's a sign on the bridge, a sign on the bridge, a very pretty sign on the bridge. I wonder what it says, I wonder what it says, and I am gonna find out. Ba, 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 ba. My glasses on my head, my glasses on my head. I can't see them without the glasses on my head. I can't recall the bridge, tell the best bridge, and I am gonna find out. I whistle when I work, I whistle when I work. I'm such a friggin' pistol when I work. I wanna jump trail, and I don't know how, but I am gonna find out. My pants up on my head, my pants up on my head. Gonna wear my pants up on my head. I'm such a silly jerk, a weenie book clerk, and I am gonna come out.
Happy Halloween.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Enright, and I got all dressed up just to be here to tell you about an extraordinary upcoming event. On Friday, November 17th, Oakland's Tricentennial Gala will take place to celebrate the 300th anniversary of the founding of our borough. What better way to open the holiday season than with an elegant evening of fine dining and dancing at the beautiful Sheridan Crossroads in Mahwah. Black tie will be optional, and the festivities begin at 7:30 p.m. with cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, including a 2-hour open bar. Next will be open wine service throughout a superb 5-course meal. Entertainment will be provided by the Showtime Orchestra, which will play music from the 1940s to the 90s. Whatever beat gets you on your feet, they'll be playing. But we promise, no theme song from the Oaklander. For tickets to this once-in-a-lifetime event, call 337-8706. The ticket price is $65 per person, $60 for senior citizens age 62 and over. There also will be free transportation provided for the seniors. Reservation deadline is October 17th. So to be part of an unforgettable evening dedicated to the celebration of this fine town in which we all live, mark your calendars for November 17th. Get your friends, neighbors, and family members together to call 337-8706 and reserve your table right away. We promise you'll be so glad that you did. We look forward to seeing you at Oakland's Tricentennial Gala, dressed to impress and ready to celebrate.
One of the joys of searching for new talent for the show is speaking to people and to suddenly find yourself deep in a diamond mine of creative gems. Could one of the best-known greats on the classical guitar in fact be Oakland's little-known secret? With us now is Emmett Finley. Welcome to the Oaklander, Emmett.
Thank you.
Emmett, you're originally from Oakland, and you had your early years as a child musician. Tell us about some of the people and some of the uncles that have brought you here today.
Oh, well, you got two different subjects. When I was young, I asked my mother when I started playing guitar, and she said, well, actually, the guitar came out first and you came out second. I said, well, that's interesting. Anyway, I was playing in my room when I was around 6 years old on my own, just learning on your own. Rock and roll cannot be taught. It's something you either feel or you don't feel. So I was in there strumming away, probably Beatles tunes or something. And my mother was very good friends with Les Paul and Mary Ford. They used to do charity work together for cerebral palsy, March of Dimes in those days.
Okay.
And Les had mentioned to my mother, what's that sound coming out of the back bedroom? She said, that's my son Emmett. He tries with the guitar. Next thing I know, I've got Les Paul standing in my room at 7 years old and saying whatever he said, one way or the other. And so he took an interest in me. He was the first patron or person who took an interest in my talent.
And some of the uncles, so to speak, who had brought you along. I saw some of the pictures of your uncles on your wall.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us about them.
That's quite, we're quantum leaping this because after that, after 7, I went through rock and roll period. Till I was 23, I played rock bands. Nothing but rock and roll. I had no idea of classical, whatever. No one showed it to me. No one, my parents weren't into it. I didn't know it. And I was at a party one day in the 60s. They put on a classical record. The whole place emptied out. All my friends left the room. I was the only one left in the room, listening. So I'm listening, and the piece finishes. And I say, just what was that to the host? The host says, that's classical music. I said, I'm sitting there crying now, okay? I said, what instrument? Who was the composer? What is this? He says, well, it's Bach. I said, well, I've heard of Bach, but what instrument was it? He said, guitar. That freaked me out. I couldn't believe it was the sound of a guitar. It turned out to be a man named Andre Segovia playing. So immediately, and I was under CBS contract for rock and roll at the time, a very big contract with Clive Davis. I dropped the contract, I vanished from sight. Murray the K was my manager at the time. I lost him. Yeah, I dropped him. I dropped all my friends. I lost all my friends. None of them would stick with me through this at all. They wanted me to keep playing Cream and Beatles. Okay. So I switched to classical immediately and tried to find a teacher. I found a teacher, the greatest in New York. His name was Leonid Bolotin, a Russian violinist. He was 75 years old, friend of the pictures on the wall. Now we can get to the pictures on the wall. He was a Russian expatriate, friends with Yasha Heifetz. They came to this country together. He, Yasha Heifetz, and Vladimir Horowitz in steerage on the ship to get out of the Russian Revolution in 1917. So I asked everyone, who's the best classical teacher I could possibly find? Because they're difficult. Teachers are very rare. Because it's such a popular instrument, there's many bad teachers for it, okay? So I asked and asked and asked. Finally, they said this man, Leonid Bolotin in New York. Turns out my friend, who was a hippie with me way back in the early days, knows the family, and never told me during the whole rock period that he knew classical music. I almost killed him on the spot. His mother calls up Leonid Bolotin, gets me an audition. I passed the audition. I studied for a year with Mr. Bolotin, and then moved into his house. With he and his wife for 10 years, I became his son. So the education was awesome. He was head of Mannes College in New York for 50 years. He's now gone. But I lived there for 10 years. The education was incredible. And a knock at the door comes one day. I go to the door, I open the door. Who's standing there? Yasha Heifetz. My mouth drops to the ground. Nobody tells me this man's coming. They're all friends. They come in for dinner. They speak Russian. Ba-ba. Emmett, would you get the guitar and play for... Yeah, sure. I'm a year student, and I'm going to come out and play for Yasha Heifetz? You got to be kidding me. I mean, just throw hot borscht on me and leave me in the room. And I did the best I could. Okay, 6 months later, same thing. Ringing the doorbell. I don't know who's there now. Now I'm a little prepared, but I don't know who it is. Vladimir Horowitz shows up at the door with his wife, Mimi. Okay, this was just after his serious illness with his hands. People that know classical music know Yasha Heifetz went through some pretty tough times. He thought his hands turned to glass. He wouldn't play for like 10 years. He was in the hospital, the whole thing. So he comes in. We have dinner again, the whole thing in Russian, you know. Again, the inevitable question, Emmett, why don't you get the guitar and play for the maestro? Play for the maestro? You gotta be kidding me. People are around the block at Carnegie Hall to wait for this man's debut, and he's there for dinner because of his love for my adopted father, Bolotin, living there. Emmett came out and played, and I didn't do so bad the second time. I wasn't quite so nervous. Okay. Third time, ring at the bell 6 months later. Who is it? Now I'm expecting the Queen of Spain to show up or anything. I don't know what's going to happen, okay, at this point. Open the door, and it's Segovia paying his respects to my father, my adopted father, Bolotin, because a violinist of that rank is rated way, way up there. Orchestras bow when the man walks into the Metropolitan in New York. I saw it happen, so. In comes Segovia. Now the meal's in Spanish. Segovia, the inevitable question comes, the worst possible question, play for Segovia now. This is my third year there, okay? I said, absolutely not. Now, I've played for Heifetz, I've played for Horowitz, or tried to. You want me to play for Segovia? I'll drop so many notes under the table, we'll make a symphony out of the mistakes. You can't make me do this. Oh. Come out and play. So I played. Segovia said, of course, he plays very well because you taught him, Leonid, to my father. But he said, the next year he came, and he used to come every year and pay his respects. After February 2nd, he did a concert in New York. Segovia, this man, Andre Segovia, very famous man. Mm-hmm. The second year he came, he brought me a guitar as a gift, one of his own guitars, which I have and maybe could show you later, but that was my third experience. So that explains why I call them my adopted uncles, because they'd give me advice, and it was a family. It was an extraordinary fate. I mean, imagine that.
You've traveled far and wide in your career, and it was a pleasure being in your home to seeing some of your gold records and some of these pictures of Ringo Starr and George
the
Bush.
The Beatles story. I'll make it quick. When I lived I grew up in Oakland, went to New York, got my education for 10 years, and then toured Vienna, Paris, went all over and played. Okay? Then I wound up in Colorado right outside Aspen, playground for the rich and famous and hypocrites. Okay? So I go there and play. And who do I meet? Ringo. I teach John Denver. He becomes my student. Chris Everett becomes my student. John McEnroe becomes. So I'm dealing with all these celebrities, and they're not all they're cracked up to be. It's no big deal, and I don't want to name drop because I hate that. But all of a sudden I meet Ringo, and no wonder the Beatles were signed. They said they signed them for their personalities, not even for their music in the early days, and now I see why. He was funny, he was witty, he was wonderful. We became pretty close. And Ringo says this to me. He says, do you know they have a Beatles trivia pursuit game? I said, no, I didn't know that, Richie. I call him Richie. He says, yeah, I sat down at the table the other night with a bunch of friends. I couldn't get one question right. They answered every drumstick I ever used in every concert. I couldn't get one damn question right. So that's why you saw the Beatles picture signed on my wall.
Well, why are you not on tour? Do you miss the concert circuit, or is teaching more fulfilling to you now?
Right now, it's more fulfilling. I love to play. My ego needs to play once in a while at concert just to keep me going. But after teaching boys like that newspaper in front of you. He's 12 years old.
Andy Hackbar?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He's the one that you
heard
had
it.
given me a tape to
Right.
listen to, and he was extraordinary.
Yeah, and he was with me a year and a half. That's it. I mean, my teaching is incredible. My playing, I leave to others to judge. They can say I stink. I don't care what they say. But my teaching is impeccable because of all the years with Bola team, right there in the house. So I taught that boy a year and a half, and now he's got scholarships all over the place and whatever. So young people, I see the results of them all of a sudden changing their character, their hearts, going from bald-headed tattoos, bungee, rap jump, into something more musical they had no idea about. And that's my job, to swing them over. Not to classical, because I hate that word, just music. And when they see what I do, they say, hey man, can I do that too? I said, yeah, just come and be tortured by me and you'll have no problem.
You do have a magnetic presence to your personality.
But you've got to prove it to those young people first. You've got to say, I came out of rock and roll. Here's a lick, man. You want to dig this? Yeah. Well, you want to do that? Yeah. Well, then you study. And this is how you study.
How early should someone decide in life that they would like to study under a master?
It depends on the talent of the child and whether the parent's willing to take the lessons. It's the parent who studies, not the child. He's got to sit with him every night, go through the studies every night. And what I've found is the young people, it's their love and attraction to please me more than it is the music or the art or the aesthetics of it. They have no idea about that when they're 4 years old.
Yeah.
They just want to please me every week. That's what I try to infuse in them. And that's how Andy got so good. And that's important to me. You asked the question, why not fame? Why don't I pursue fame and all this? I see rewards coming out of this that I think are more important to God than anything else. It's straightening out our young people because their main interest is music. High school, that's all you hear. What's the latest group? You know, Doug and the Slugs. This is not going to make their character grow. This is not going to help their heart or their mind or their soul. I will.
True. True. Could you explain a little bit about the voices of the classical guitar?
The voices?
The voices that you can...
Interesting question. When you talk about voices, you're talking about what I consider color. And Beethoven's favorite instrument was the guitar, by the way. People don't know that.
I did not know
Yeah,
that.
he had many friends from Vienna. I could name the names, but no one would know them. You know, Giuliani, all these masters. Every time they came through Vienna, they would stop and play for the maestro, Beethoven, when he could hear, okay? And he called the guitar a small orchestra, because that's what it is. If it's played like a piano, not just banged on with a pick. So that's the color of the guitar. It's loaded with nuances, oboes, bassoons, trumpets, horns. This is what got to me through Segovia. So when you say voices, that's what I interpret as color.
And this is...
Without an amp, without anything, just you on that stage alone. No microphone, no nothing. You're on your own.
Sure. So you have a wide array of people that you've studied with, that you have played with, that call you on the phone late at night.
Oh, I told you. Well, I told you. Bob Dylan called me the other day and blew a student's mind right out of the chair. I let the student hear him talking to me. The student flipped out. It was an older student. Then one day, a student was saying something about Cream or Clapton or anything, and I was so angry, okay, because he was so totally absorbed in these idols. These people, Clapton and they're my friends. Leo Kottke is a good friend. He gave me a guitar. I showed you the guitar Leo gave me.
The 9-string.
Yes, yes. I hack these marble statues to pieces. I tell them my job is to be a pedestal smasher. These heroes that you're worshiping are not the heroes you should be worshiping. Just because Beethoven's on the wall and everything else doesn't mean that they crap marble, okay? This is not the point. And your heroes, we will diminish and diminish until you're the hero. Let Clapton talk about, oh, I heard Harvey Schwartz play, not Harvey Schwartz say, I heard Clapton play.
Harvey Schwartz he lives up Long Hill Road.
Yeah, it is. I think I saw him in the road before. He's chasing a groundhog.
Really?
That's what's important.
We have...
I didn't finish. The kid had me so angry. I got out of the chair, I looked in my phone book, I looked up Eric Clapton, London, called him up on the phone, luckily got him, because I usually don't get him, and I said, Eric, I got a student here who doesn't quite believe in me or what I'm teaching and everything else. Put him on the phone. The kid gets on the phone, he's talking to Eric Clapton. The kid's nose is running, you know, his ears are flopping. He doesn't know what to do with his hero. Clapton says, if you're with Emmett, do exactly what he tells you to do and don't move out of that study. That was Eric's
Really?
words. Yeah, he's a sweetheart.
It's,
Well, you saw it yourself.
yes, I did. May we go in and maybe we can pick up and hear some of your students playing a piece for us?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And these guys have only been with me a little while, very little while. So 1 month with me is 5 years at wherever, you know, Harvey's Music or whatever it is.
All right. Emmett, may we hear your students play a piece for us?
Absolutely.
Okay, here's a little piece by Mauro Giuliani, and it's basically just a study in D major, short piece.
change, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
no,
letting you get
yeah.
away with that.
I'm Jim Raimondo, and I'm a student of Emmett Finley's. And although I study classical with him, I venture into other styles. That's primarily what I do. I've only been studying with him for maybe a month, and already one of the things that has increased is my ability to use my fingers. I mean, I really didn't use my fingers at all, you know, except to maybe do a tapping type thing in a rock situation. So right now I can take the liberty of, you know, playing some other things that I would ordinarily have to rely on a pick for, and it just lends a different dimension to a style even like jazz, you know, because they, you know, it's pretty common to use your fingers there also. This piece is called All the Things You Are, and I'm going to play a little rendition of it for you.
Well, we've reached the end of our show for this evening. Our thanks to our guests for sharing their thoughts and their views on music, UFO, and local and social issues. As always, we welcome new talent to be featured on our show, so don't be shy. Just give us a call and we'll share that special spark of creative genius with our viewers. For the Oaklander, I'm your host, Al DiGiacomo, and we'll see you next time.